What's going on, guys? I'm here with another episode of the 49ers Red Zone podcast. Today, day 7 of training camp just finished. We are back. I'm going to be breaking down everything, and I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts, the honest opinions, after today's somewhat of a slow start offensively. Again, I'm going to preface that pads were not there today. I'll break everything down, and as always, answer you guys' questions, but more after this.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's going on, guys? We are back today with another live stream. Day 7 of training camp finished just a bit ago. Today was a shorter practice. I got home a little earlier, as a matter of fact. And real quick, got to give a shout out to the guys in the chat. Thank you for tuning in, Tom. And so, just the initial outlook. There wasn't too much to today's practice. I didn't really care that much about the overall results, which means that everything that I say today has to be taken with a grain of salt. Why? First of all, yesterday was the huge ramp up period. You saw a bunch of action yesterday because there were 3 scrimmages totaling 68 total plays, which was more than any other scrimmage. So today was already bound to be a lower day in terms of the amount of plays that were going to happen. And additionally, George Kittle not practicing. Treverius Ward not practicing. Dre Greenlaw not practicing. 3 big names were not practicing today. Yesterday also, like Kali says here, tensions were getting a little high. So maybe you calm it down. That was the thought process. But also because tomorrow is the day off. So normally before the day off, just like last week, you do a little bit of a ramp down. I'd expect Friday to be a little more of a slower period as well before really pushing it on Saturday, which should be the best practice overall. Today, like I said, a ramp down. The most surprising thing to me was no pads. The 49ers did not wear pads today despite having started padded practice on Monday. And when there's no pads, what does that mean? Well, the defensive line, first of all, is expected to dominate just because the offensive line can't necessarily block. And the run game normally gets stalled because of it, because you can't really go out blocking like you normally would, pancaking players, and getting out to the second level and really putting a blow on a different defensive lineman. So to me, there are a bunch of caveats with today's practice. But with that said, let's get into the good. Let's get into the bad. Let's break down what happened today. And I'm sure, as all of you know, Trey Lance did struggle a bit today. Through 1 of 7 for his completions in the first period, which is the boat scrimmages. He finished this scrimmage period 1 of 7. Then he finished the red zone period 2 of 2 for a total of 3 of 9. People have him at 2 touchdowns. I personally have him at 1 touchdown on the day. The Jermichael Hasty throw, I thought that Samson Ebukam could have gotten there had it been a padded practice and a tackle, which is why I didn't count it as a touchdown, because it was a 5-yard out. It wasn't a pass to the end zone itself. But overall, it was an all right day for Lance, but a pretty struggling day. I'll get into everything, and you guys will understand why plays went as they were, because there's always context involved. So, as always, what am I going to do? I'm going to start with the play-by-play for the 11-on-11 session, go through all of the plays, break down exactly what happened on every play. Then after that, I'm going to go into the offense, defense, and then I'm definitely going to answer your questions. So if you have any questions at this point about anything going on in training camp, be sure to drop it in the chat. And then after I go by the play-by-play, before I head into the offense, I'll answer your questions. And then after that, I'll also answer your questions in the middle as well as the end. So a lot of time to answer your questions. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And let's show some love before we start. Got to say shout out to Swan Song. Thank you for tuning in, as well as Tanya. CJ Gray, Mariah, thank you for tuning in. Notorious GAV, as well as Big Papa. All of you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. But like I said, Trey Lance, he struggled today. Let's get into it. A lot of running plays as well today. So to start it off, Elijah Mitchell, first team offense, he got a couple of carries after not too big of a day the other day. Elijah Mitchell got a 0 yard carry to start the day. Oren Burks was there. It was a rush to the left side. The defense overwhelmed. Trent Williams did get to the second level, but he blocked one of the linebackers, the middle linebacker, and Fred Warner. The outside linebacker, Oren Burks, was there. Got Elijah Mitchell for a 0 yard gain. Then on the second play, Elijah Mitchell got a 5 yard run up the middle. A good game there by Elijah Mitchell. On the third play, one thing I noted, Jeff Wilson Jr., he actually got first team reps today. I've been noting that he struggled in camp so far. That is one thing that has been an issue, right? Jeff Wilson Jr., he looks a little slower than last year. He doesn't look the same post injury. Remember, he tore his, what was it? He had an Achilles injury, I believe, last year in the offseason. So that was something to read. But he was getting first team reps today after not practicing in team drills over the last 2 days due to an undisclosed injury. So that's something to know. On the third play, though, Trey Lance got a tackle for loss. It was a zone read. Fred Warner was there. Lance took the ball himself. He probably should have handed it off to Jeff Wilson. Lance ran to the left side. Wilson was to the right side. Most of the defense fixated on the left side. If Wilson had gotten it, might have been a 2 to 3 yard gain had Wilson been able to get to the edge. Instead, tackle for loss, Fred Warner was in on the play. On the fourth play, Trey Lance threw an incompletion to Brandon Eyuk. Eyuk was running a route towards the right sideline, 40 yards deep. Lance, though, it was in a throw not on target. It was out of bounds, just a tad bit overthrown, 40 yards deep, ended up out of bounds, not really close to a completion. On the fifth play, Nate Sutfeld came in with the second team, hit Ray Mcleod for a 20-yard play. Kadar Holman was in coverage. Then on the sixth play, Trey Sermon came in, got his first rush of the day, and it was a 0 yard gain. On the seventh play, Tyrion Davis-Price came in. This was again with the second team as well as Charles O'Menahue and Jordan Willis were the two edges. Tyrion Davis-Price, though, had his best run of the day. He was able to get to the edge and then got a nice short gain after getting to the edge. The acceleration was definitely there and present on the play. That quick burst, that was a good play by Tyrion Davis-Price. He had a bounce back day today after struggling initially yesterday due to the drop pitch and then finishing strong. He built on his strong performance today. He was one of the better running backs. I would say he was better than Trey Sermon today. Tyrion Davis-Price then on the eighth play got a 2 yard gain. Then came in Jordan Mason with the third team. Mason got a 3 yard gain. He started the run pretty strong and pretty quick. Ran right into the pressure, got bounced back, and then cut right in after 3 yard gain. Brock Purdy then got his first throw of the day. He got a 20 yard throw to Tanner Hudson. There was good. Purdy had good pocket presence, stepped up after facing initial pressure, and made the throw to the right side. Good play to Tanner Hudson, who got a good amount of reps today after, no George Kittle. Jordan Matthews has been injured. He was seen leaving the building on crutches. Remember, he got injured 2 days ago on a one-on-one drill after an awkward landing. Seems to have hurt his something in his left knee, ankle, or foot. And so that is an issue. And so TE2 right now is somewhat it's just in the air right now. To start, Tyler Croft was the starting tight end today. He got a lot of first team reps, but Tanner Hudson had a nice play here from Brock Purdy. Trey Lance then came back in with the first team offense. His first throw was a quick one, a 4-yard throw to the flat to Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell dropped the pass. Then Lance came back and hit Elijah Mitchell once again for a short gain. The first one was to the flat on the left side, cutting to the middle. The second one was to the right side. It was a quick gain, probably 3 yards on the play. A completion. That was Lance's only completion of the scrimmage session. Lance then, on the next play, had another passing play. Samson Ebukam, though, got the initial pressure was rushing off the left side against the first team offense. Trent Williams was occupied elsewhere, so Ebukam had somewhat of a free rush. He went at Lance. Lance tried to throw the ball over Ebukam. Remember yesterday, Lance had one issue, and that was the batted passes. He had 2 batted passes in his 10 of 16 performance yesterday. So he tried to throw the ball over Ebukam to the flat to JaMychal Hasty. The ball was a little too high, went off Hasty's fingertips, incompletion. Then continuing on, Elijah Mitchell got his next carry. He got a good gain there, rushed for a few yards, and his speed was pretty nice on this play. Seems like he's back to pre-injury Elijah Mitchell in terms of that speed. So that was a good job there. George Odom then came on the next play. It was a blitz, and George Odom got a sack on that play on Nate Sutfeld. Sutfeld continued the play, threw the ball to Trey Sermon in the flat for 3 yards, who then caught the ball and got 5 to 7 yards after the catch. One note that I'll mention later today, Jake Brendel was back with the starting lineup. The guy that, what do you call it? Jake Brendel, he was the backup yesterday. Brunskill took a majority of the reps, and Brunskill looked good with the first team. I expected the starting job to honestly be given to Brunskill after yesterday because the offensive line looked its best, and there was cohesion between the interior offensive lineman and the quarterback as well. But then Jake Brendel, for some reason, got the starting role today, which was very interesting. And Brendel and Brunskill split time with the ones and twos today. Brendel was starting with the twos, then initially, and then in the middle in the series here, in the second series, went back with the ones. Continuing on after the Sudfeld sack by George Odom and then hitting Trey Sermon. On the next play, Sudfeld found Jeff Wilson Jr. in the middle for a check down, 4-yard gain on the play. Then Sudfeld found Brandon Eyuk for its 10 to 12-yard gain. This was an amazing catch. Sudfeld didn't really throw the ball very well on this play, but still he threw it up for a 50-50 ball for Brandon Eyuk. Eyuk essentially just jumped up over Ambry Thomas, mossed him, made a spectacular catch over Ambry Thomas, and then somehow kept both feet in the air, inbounds near the sideline. So that was a good play there from Brandon Eyuk, one of his many amazing catches of the day. Great day for Brandon Eyuk. Continuing on, Tyrion Davis-Price, one of his better plays. One play that I'm really liking from the 49ers and Tyrion Davis-Price is the HB draw. Why? Because it allows HB draw essentially is a delayed handoff. And what that allows is for the 49ers offensive line to get out into the second level early. And what do you need when you have that offensive line in the second level early? You need a guy who's really quick off the burst. Davis-Price was quick off the burst, got 6 to 7 yards with great run blocking on the play. And it was one of the better runs of the day. Again, no pads today, so it is a struggle in a way to sustain run blocking because you can't block to the capacity that you normally do. So that was a good play by the offensive line and by Tyrion Davis-Price. On the 19th play, second and final play of the first scrimmage, Brock Purdy found Tanner Hudson once again for about 30 yards down the field. Tanner Hudson caught the ball over Marcelino McCrary ball. It was a 50-50 ball. Great play by Tanner Hudson over the rookie McCrary ball. But as Hudson turned around, he dropped the pass. So unfortunately, it was an incompletion, but it was a great play by Tanner Hudson. Great throw and great play, but Hudson ended up dropping the ball. Leon O'Neal, I believe, was on the play, but in my opinion, it was just a pure concentration play. Hudson had to just keep his eye on the ball, and he would have been fine. On the last play of scrimmage to begin, Brock Purdy threw an interception. The ball was intended for Taysier Mack. Mack bobbled it. It was up in the air, and Deommodore Lenoir got the interception, returned it for a touchdown. So that was the first scrimmage of the day, the entirety of the first scrimmage. Here is the second scrimmage of the day. So stay tuned. In the first scrimmage, if you wanted stats, Trey Lance threw 1 of 4. He had 1 drop pass on the play and 1 essentially the what do you call it? The Ebukam play was due to the defensive lineman being there, where he had to throw it over Ebukam for the incompletion. 1 for 4 to begin the scrimmage session. Let's continue with the second one. On the first play of the second scrimmage, this was Trey Lance's best play of the day, in my opinion. It was a zone read play with Elijah Mitchell. Lance completely diagnosed it properly. He had failed to diagnose it on the first play. I believe he should have handed it off to Jeff Wilson Jr. earlier on the third play of scrimmage. Instead, this time, Lance diagnosed that the linebacker was going with Mitchell to the left side. Lance faked the handoff, ran straight up the gut for 6 to 7 yards. Great blocking on the play and a great decision by Trey Lance. One of his better reps of the day, rushing standpoint and throwing standpoint. On the next play, Trey Lance tried to hit Deebo Samuel. This was the ball that you heard about, I'm sure, on Twitter and everywhere. Deebo Samuel ran a deep route about 40 yards down the field. Trey Lance, this was his most accurate pass of the day, threw it right into Deebo Samuel's hands. Emmanuel Mosley was very close in coverage. Good coverage by Mosley. This was also a good play because Lance diagnosed the pressure and made a good play. Drake Jackson had beaten Mcglinchey on the play, although the rest of the pressure was good, so Jackson didn't get there in time. But Lance hit Samuel. This would have been a touchdown pass, and instead, Deebo Samuel dropped the ball. Mosley might have gotten his hand in there at the end, but Deebo Samuel should have made this catch, and so this was one of the drops on the day. Unfortunately, the Lance and Samuel connection really hasn't shined so far. There's been one catch that's not a screen. There was the 15-yard screen play yesterday, but there was also about a 20-yard catch downfield, which was a really nice completion. Today, though, they struggled to connect several times. Trey Sermon then got the next play. He had a good rush. He cut to the middle. He cut from the middle to the right. It was a nice cut from Trey Sermon, a guy who has been having a solid camp so far. A nice one cut here from Sermon for 5 yards. Sutfeld then came back in and hit Ray Mcleod on a 10-yard out. Samuel Womack was the cover. One other thing, Samuel Womack, he got run with the ones. Samuel Womack hasn't had a first-team snap until today, and he was the starting cornerback in the slot in run-throughs today. So that was a very, very interesting development. That might bode well for his future, but also bode well for the 49ers, who might not carry Darqueze Dennard on this roster. But let's continue on. On the fifth play of the second scrimmage, Brock Purdy was the quarterback. He subbed in, and he got sacked. Kerry Hyder was there. One other defensive lineman was there. Purdy continued the pass, hit Jordan Mason, who had a good cut inbounds. It was a 3-yard pass and then 5 yards after the catch. Purdy then came back, tried to hit Austin Mack, but Deommodore Lenoir once again made a good play. Pass breakup on the play on a pass intended for Austin Mack. Good throw, but better coverage by Deommodore Lenoir. On the next play, Trey Lance came back in. He was looking for Brandon Eyuk on the right sideline. However, he was pressured. Kevin Givens beat Burford. Kevin Givens beat Jake Brendel for a sack. Lance tried to hit Brandon Eyuk, but Eyuk was very well covered. This ball was off target. It landed out of bounds as Eyuk was going towards the right sideline about 35 yards down the field. And Charvarius Ward was in coverage, Talanoa Hufanga was in coverage, and Jimmy Ward was near the vicinity as well. So a good play overall by the defense. It was just great coverage, nowhere really to throw the ball in the direction of Eyuk for Lance. Hence the hence the miss as well as the off-target throw. On the next play, there was an overload blitz from the defense. Trey Lance threw it deep. It was an incompletion. Deebo Samuel seemed to be on the wrong page with Lance. Lance threw a 40-yard deep route, a 40-yard deep ball down the field. And Deebo Samuel had run a 20-yard out route. So they were completely not communicating on that play. Lance, you could attribute this as a throwaway. There was nowhere near the defense. So because of the pressure, Lance might have thrown that ball away. But if it wasn't a throwaway, and if it truly was intended for Deebo Samuel, that's not a great sign, given that Deebo Samuel ran a completely different route. There were 3 more plays before the red zone period. Nate Sutfeld checked down to Jeff Wilson Jr. for a 3-yard catch and a 7 yards after the catch. Brock Purdy pitched the ball to JaMychal Hasty for a run. However, as he tried to cut back in, he ran right into Jordan Willis for a 0-yard gain. Then Purdy hit Tanner Hudson, the tight end, on an 8-yard out route. Segun Olabi was the first in coverage. So that was the entirety of scrimmage. If you want to know the scrimmage stats, Trey Lance finished the scrimmage. This is 2 scrimmage periods, by the way. Lance finished the scrimmage 1 of 7. Nate Sutfeld finished the scrimmage 6 of 6. And I believe Brock Purdy finished the scrimmage. Oh, I forget what Brock Purdy exactly finished the scrimmage. I will find it right now, actually, because it wasn't a great day overall, but because like when you see the amount of completions, it was, what do you call it? It was like the amount of completions were all really checkdowns. But here we go. Starting off for the stats, so Lance finished the red zone session 1 of 7. He had 1 drop, and he had 2 drops, one from Deebo Samuel, and the other one was the one I mentioned way earlier from Elijah Mitchell. The second drop, the other pass that I mentioned was the pass where Samson Ebukam altered the point of the pass, making it a little too high. So those were 3 of the incompletions by Lance. The other 3 were all deep passes, which 2 were off target. Let me rephrase because I want to make sure you guys get the right information. Lance was 1 of 7. Of the one completion was a check down to Elijah Mitchell. He had 2 drops, one on Elijah Mitchell on the check down, one that would have been a touchdown to Deebo Samuel. He had 1 throw that was a miscommunication. He had 1 throw where the defensive lineman altered the throw in Samson Ebukam, forcing it to be a little high to the flat. And then the other incompletions were all off target deep throws to either Brandon Eyuk twice or Deebo Samuel once. So that was the variety of Trey Lance's throws, and hence why he was incomplete on some of these throws. And overall, he didn't really have a great day. Nate Sudfeld, on the other hand, was 6 of 6 during the 11-on-11 session, while Brock Purdy was 2 of 5, had the interception and a drop, which was on the interception. So that was a part of Brock Purdy's day overall. Now let's move on to the red zone period. And then after that, I will get through all of your questions, every single one that you have put in the chat, before talking about the offense and defense. Starting on the red zone, Mitchell was the first team running back. He rushed for a few yards. Elijah Mitchell then on the second play cut back from the middle. It was a great play by Daniel Brunskill and Spencer Burford, who combined for good run blocks. Elijah Mitchell was able to get 5 yards in the red zone. And one other thing, guys, in the red zone period, it's harder to run the ball. The defensive line is a lot more stacked. Remember, you don't have to cover as much, so that is another difference. It is harder to run the ball, hence the shorter gains, if you guys didn't know, as well as the lack of pads. On the third play, this was Trey Lance's probably best play of the day, best throw of the day, that is. Lance had a rollout on a play action play, faced pressure based on defenders coming through, and Lance fired while on the run, facing pressure to his right side to Brandon Eyuk, who caught the touchdown pass, kept 2 feet in the 2 feet inbounds, and this was a great play by Trey Lance. Great throw. It was accurate on the money, and great catch by Brandon Eyuk, who kept 2 feet in. Good job by both sides. That was their touchdown pass, and one of their, I believe they have one more completion in this period. I'll check, no, they did not, but Brandon Eyuk did, and you'll hear about it later. Next, Trey Lance hit JaMychal Hasty on a checkdown play. This was that 5-yard out. Immediate pressure was there. Lance was able to get the ball out, and Hasty ran along the sideline. He ended up in the end zone. I didn't count this as a touchdown, although you can. I thought that Samson Ebukam would have ended up getting there had pads been on, and had he run Had he run in full, I didn't think that Hasty would have made it to the end zone because he wasn't already there, hence why I didn't count it. But you can count it as you may. That was a nice completion. Lance ended up being 2 of 2 in the red zone session after struggling in the first red zone session this Monday. Nate Sudfeld then came in, hit Deebo Samuel on a 7-yard play to the left sideline. Ambry Thomas was close in coverage. It was tight coverage in a way. Good throw and catch by Sutfeld and Samuel. Segun Olabi as well was the first person to Samuel right after the catch. Sermon then got his carry. He got a short gain. There was a flag, though, on the play, so you can count it as you may. Not too big of a play there because of the penalty. Jeff Wilson Jr. then came in. He got a 2-yard rush to the right, playing with the second team. Another one of his many carries on Wednesday. Nate Sutfeld then came in and hit Brandon Eyuk for an acrobatic touchdown. Eyuk was running a route from the right side, slanted in over the middle, and Sutfeld threw the pass. It was a little out in front, but Eyuk leaped for the ball and was able to keep, obviously, both feet in against Kadar Holman. Great catch by Brandon Eyuk, one of his better catches of the day, and a touchdown pass from Nate Sutfeld. On the ninth play, Jeff Wilson Jr. had a good cut to the right side for 4 yards. This was one of the plays where he really looked explosive on the day. The remainder, he didn't necessarily look as explosive, although he did look a little more rejuvenated after the 2 days off, which seemed to clearly help. And 2 days off, I mean in team drills. But he had a good cut to the right for 4 yards here. Purdy then came in for the final play and hit Tanner Hudson on a 5-yard out. Overall, here are the stats. Trey Lance, 3 of 9. He threw 1 of 7 in scrimmage, had 2 drops, and as I mentioned, the other incompletions played as they did. And then in the red zone, went 2 for 2 with a touchdown. Nate Sutfeld finished 6 of 6. And then in the red zone, finished 2 of 2 with a touchdown. Brock Purdy finished 2 of 5. It was an INT and a drop for Brock Purdy. And then he finished 1 of 1 in the red zone. That is the quarterback stats and the completion of the 11 on 11 and the red zone period. So now I'm going to answer all your questions, then break down every offensive position and every defensive position. So let's go back to the top and let's see what you guys are saying. Again, thank you all for being in the chat. It's an honor and a blessing to definitely be able to speak to you guys, to be able to attend training camp and give you guys all of my observations. I hope that you guys know by now, I don't really try and put my opinion at all into observations. I tell you guys what I see and I just report it as I see it. Hopefully that's clear to you guys by now. And Ty Olson asks, are you in the locker room? At the moment, I don't think anybody is in the locker room. I am not, though. I'm not with the media. I'm just there at practice, watching every single practice. Swan Song says, hit the like button. Yeah, make sure to hit the like button. Thank you guys so much. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. There's a lot of content. I post clips from training camp itself, so be sure to check those out real quick because Trey Lance is throwing there. I posted a clip of Jimmy Garoppolo, who was at practice today, throwing as a part of his throwing program, so be sure to check it all out. And here is our first question. The Notorious JV asks, what has Youscheck's camp been like so far? It's very interesting. Youscheck has I haven't seen much Youscheck footage, and I also haven't seen much from Kyle Youscheck. He hasn't necessarily really been featured that much in the offense, although I have pointed out a couple of interesting things about Kyle Youscheck. Ooh, uh-oh. Where did my camera go? Come on, camera. Come back, camera. All right, one sec, guys. Let's get this clear and hopefully perfect. Perfect. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. We are back. But Kyle Juszczyk, I haven't seen him too much in camp. He hasn't really gotten much action either in the run game, meaning carries, or in the passing game as well. He really hasn't seen much. I think it's been maybe one catch, if at any. He has obviously gotten reps in the one-on-one game. I know he beat Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles yesterday on a one-on-one. I can check my notes to see if he recorded a one-on-one that I had today. Again, one thing about the one-on-one, guys, I don't get every single one-on-one rep because there are 2 entirely different fields. And so I try and see both sides, but I record every single one-on-one that I can to see who's winning and the notes about it. But I do not see Kyle Juszczyk on my paper, which means he did not. Either he had a catch and I didn't see it, or he didn't really have many reps at all during the one-on-one session. One thing, though, I'll say about Youscheck that I was about to say before the camera cut out was one thing I've seen from Kyle Youscheck is that he's been lining up in the slot sometimes. And with Juwan Jennings having more of a quieter camp than I expected, Ray Mcleod has been pretty solid. But you might see Kyle Youscheck out of the slot potentially, maybe even in 4 outs where you have 4 receivers on the field, including Youscheck. that could be a thing. But he's been a solid run blocker. I did see one of his run blocks where he was worked from the slot, and it was on Deebo Samuel's 15-yard screen. He paved the way as one of the blockers, including the offensive lineman, for Deebo Samuel. So that was the one major play really that I've seen from Youscheck, but nothing too much. Deebo, why did he have to drop that dime? That's a good question. I mean, Deebo Samuel so far, it's not that he's underwhelmed in camp, but the connection really needs some work, in my opinion, because after the two plays today, they were miscommunicating a little bit. Ty Elson says Jeff Wilson Jr. is my guy, but I fear he's the odd man out this season. Before today, I would agree with you. I don't know how the 49ers obviously feel. I thought Jeff Wilson Jr. was the sixth best running back in practice before today, but today he played better than Hasty. Today he played better, honestly, than a couple of the running backs. He was one of the better running backs today. He might have been running back number 2 today behind, no, running back number 3 in terms of talent. I think he played a little better than Sermon, who it's not that he had an off day. It's just he didn't see much action overall. And then JaMycal Hasty also didn't see much action. Davis Price had a good day, and I think Jeff Wilson Jr. was third. With Hasty and Wilson Jr. getting good work today, who would you say is most likely to not make the 53? So I talked about this yesterday. I really like Jordan Mason so far in camp. I think he's projected as an NFL rusher. He's been strong, physical, and that's important, especially in this inside zone scheme that we might be running a lot more in 2022. And when what I talked about is when you have an offensive line that is a little that can struggle at times, the one thing that you might want with a running back is to be physical and to get yards after contact. That's what Elijah Mitchell did last year. 2.5 yards after contact, which I believe was 8th in the NFL last year. You might want backs that resemble that. And I think Jordan Mason resembles that more than many other backs on the roster. So I could say it could be those two, Hasty and Jeff Wilson Jr., because of not only, I'm not saying roster politics, but because obviously obviously Mason is a guy who you'll have team control over for the next 2 years at least. And so that might be an option, whereas Wilson obviously is a free agent after next year, and Hasty right now is a restricted free agent or exclusive rights free agent, one of the two, meaning he has lesser years of team control. So I personally think right now that it would be Mason is 4, TDP is 3, Sermon is 2, and Mitchell is 1. Although I could definitely see Jeff Wilson Jr. and JaMycal Hasty making it, I understand the points as to why they can. I told you yesterday, I can understand why the coaches like Hasty, because while he's limited in his skill set, he's good at what he's limited at. In a way, he's the Jimmy Garoppolo of the 49ers running backs, in that Garoppolo is really good, right, in those intermediate throws and things like that, but in a way has a limited skill set because he doesn't have athleticism as much anymore after the ACL, nor does he have the ability to throw deep. JaMycal Hasty, he's solid when he's placed in a limited role. It's just how much can you really depend on JaMycal Hasty, as well as can he be a reliable pass catcher, which hasn't been the case really so far. Kyle Juszczyk is still on the team. Unfortunately, it's not actually unfortunately. I mean, fortunately, uh, the 49ers, like, they're trying to get him implemented today. I mean, the other day when George Kittle and was working with the quarterbacks in Lance and Sutfeld, Juszczyk was there with him. So hopefully that happens. Youscheck footage. There's really Youscheck hasn't like been active too much, right? As a fullback. The like I haven't seen him really in too many reps. I did see one of his one-on-ones, but you can't get footage during the one-on-one time because it's team drills. Swan Song asks, "Where's Josh Hokett been? The only thing I heard about him was the picture you took today." Yeah, so Hokett was in Jersey today, and he was wearing a helmet today. I People thought originally that was Garoppolo. It looked a little too big to be Garoppolo in a way, and then Garoppolo came out, and it was revealed that it was Josh Hokett. Hokett has been fine. He's been there. He's been on the field. He's the backup fullback, and if you expect Kyle Juszczyk to get run or to get plays. Like, imagine how many plays Josh Hokett's made, right? I do know one play completely where he got bull rushed, or he got just smoked on one of his plays where he got popped. It wasn't necessarily a pass rushing drill; it was run blocking, but he got popped. I remember that, and that was early without pads. So That was the one play really that I remember of Hokett, but not too much else. I don't expect Hokett to make the roster because the 49ers obviously don't really have an inclination to carry two fullbacks, especially when teams don't even carry one fullback in today's NFL. So that's the thing. NorCal Bill, thank you for tuning in, man. Bubbly Doge, thank you for your kind words. All right, let's continue with these questions. NorCal Bill says, "I heard TDP is looking quick around the edge. He was today. He had a nice he had one nice run where he bounced it off the edge. Where you've seen running backs do that, right? The 49ers are notorious for having running backs that are able to bounce it off the edge. You talk about Matt Breida, you talk about Raheem Mostert, and I'm not saying TDP looks as fast as them two. I still think Mitchell is faster than TDP, especially in the long run. But TDP had a nice burst today, getting to the edge, and then he got I think it was about a 5 to 10 yard gain on the play as well. So a nice rep there by TDP, especially after finishing strong yesterday following a quieter start. All right, continuing on with your questions. John asks, can Drake Jackson start opposite of Bosa? I think this is a very interesting question. I think the 49ers wouldn't mind if Drake Jackson started opposite of Nick Bosa because he's been getting they've been slowly integrating him up and up, right? He got some reps with the first team today. It wasn't very many, and other players like I know Menahue got a majority of the first team reps opposite of Ebucom. He started in walkthroughs, and then Hyder started in team drills. So those two guys kind of get the majority of the reps in a way on the edge with Teray as well in there. But Jackson has gotten a couple of first team reps. He got some last week. He got some today, and he had a pressure on Mike Mcglinchey. So he's been flashing in the limited time that he gets with the upper teams. Yesterday was one of his strongest days. He worked against Alfredo Gutierrez primarily. He worked against not Colton McKivitz. He worked against Sam Schluter at some times, and he had 4 pressures yesterday alongside 2 sacks and a tackle for loss. So a strong day yesterday for Jake Jackson. I think he's had a couple of good practices. I wonder what role will he be used in though. I don't think he's going to get many reps early on. And starting is a very interesting question because remember, on the defensive line, your starting defensive line might not necessarily be the most effective ones because your starting defensive line is dependent on stopping the run, right? Normally in base packages, it's towards the run, whereas Drake Jackson right now is being utilized more as a pass rusher. So that's important as well. I think Jackson will have, in a way, limited snaps. I don't think his snap count exceeds like 50% for sure. I think his snap count will be more in the 20-30%, somewhere around there. But I think he definitely is primed for a role because the 49ers understand his traits, how they're unmatched on the roster, and what kind of duo that him and Nick Bosa would have if Jackson gets just a little more refined, especially in one-on-one reps, because he had struggled a little bit yesterday. But I think the potential is there for this idea, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened. I think the 49ers do want Jackson, honestly, to start, but they're slowly integrating him in with the second team after playing a lot with the third team and things like that. Shylock Swindlefolk asked what were Trey's stats again. He was 1 of 7 in the scrimmage period in the 11-on-11 portion. He had 2 drops on in the period, a deep 40-yard pass from to Deebo Samuel. That was a drop. And then Elijah Mitchell in the flat cutting in for a check down. That was a drop as well. So he had 2 drops on the period. I talked about how one of his passes got altered by a defensive lineman's pressure. So that was another thing. But overall, it was a slower day for Lance. He did do really well though in the red zone. Like I said, had 2 passes, 2 completions in the red zone, and both. I thought it was 1 touchdown. Some people have said 2, but regardless, 2 completions, a touchdown pass. So a pretty good day for Trey Lance. Got to give a shout out to my guy RSF 49ers. Have been with him at training camp every single day. He's been killing it as well with the content. You already know how he rolls if y'all follow him on Instagram. If you don't, you definitely should because he just has updates 24/7. So be sure to give him a subscribe on YouTube as well as check out his Twitter and Instagram as well. All right, continuing with your questions, give me 1 minute. Let me get something set up. All right, let's go. So, Notorious GAV has asked, how much has Kerry Hyder featured so far? How's he looked so far? So, these are two really good questions because Kerry Hyder, in my opinion, was a guy who I thought was signed, but wouldn't make the roster initially. Now, remember, the 49ers now have injuries. Hassan Ridgeway with a quad injury that could cost him a couple of weeks. We don't even know if he'll be ready for week one at this point. As Arik Armstead has a sprained MCL, I think he'll be ready for week one. But the most important one, Mo Hurst. He is out likely for the year after a torn biceps injury, and that opens up another potential spot in an already deep defensive line unit for a person to make the roster. Hyder has seen time, significant time. He's seen reps with the first team. He's seen reps with the second team. You normally see him playing with one of those two teams, but how has he looked? He hasn't really looked that good so far, I'll be honest. He's looked more better. He's looked better in the run game than the pass game, but with the amount of reps that he's gotten, I haven't seen too much out of Hyder. I think he's gotten 1 sack so far. I haven't seen too much out of Hyder in terms of pure pass rush acumen so far, and that hasn't necessarily been his game. He's a guy who normally benefits out of coverage sacks. At least that was the case in 2020 with his 8.5 sacks when you look at the film. So I'm interested to see if the 49ers keep Hyder as a body will come the 53-man roster time. But I don't know if he's been one of the more impressive 49er defensive linemen. But then again, you take that interestingly because of how dominant the defensive line has been so far. DC asks, who's winning the QB2 battle? In my opinion, there is no battle. I think Nate Sutfeld is the clear-cut quarterback too, based on what I've seen. Brock Purdy just doesn't have the arm strength to compete for a quarterback position right now. I think he's a bona fide practice squad player. I don't even know if Brock Purdy will make the roster in 2023 as the backup quarterback, just because his lack of arm strength is definitely apparent on his throws. It's not that he can't be accurate. It's not that he has bad pocket pressure. In fact, he has some of the better pocket pressure from this 49ers quarterback room. But overall, Purdy just can't compete with Sudfeld right now because he's a year behind in the playbook, which already is a benefit to Sudfeld. And Sudfeld's like intangibles, his height weight combination just fit better alongside his arm strength, which fits better with the 49ers and what they're trying to do. Sudfeld is right now just a better quarterback, even if he only throws a bunch of checkdowns and things like that. So that is something to keep in mind. All right, continuing forward. Let's see what other questions. We see one from Niner Warrior here. From what you have seen, what is Kyle's body language, facial expressions when Trey's been making mistakes? Is he coaching him up time and time, or is he letting his assistants do that? I don't think you can take much away from Kyle's body language right now. He's not doing too much. He is calling the plays. You can see him behind the defense. As for coaching him up, Lance has spent most of his time with Brian Greasy, and I think it's Brian Fleury, the assistant the assistant, like the offensive assistant, and then the quarterback's coach. That is, when you see him in drills, Lance is always with them. Them to put out the quarterback drills and work with the three quarterbacks. And then obviously when they go out while Shanahan is calling plays, Lance I think talks the most with them. So obviously I'm sure there's stuff behind the scenes, but I don't think it's Shanahan too much with Lance. Although I mean, they seem to have a good relationship. I'm sure they're working hand in hand with each other on the regular anyway, given their both of their work ethics. This is funny. No, he is not. All the streams say Land struggled, overthrows, Sudfeld maybe QB1. So Sudfeld is not competing for QB1. Shylock, I did give a breakdown of every single throw of Lance's. It's not that he isn't struggling, but there has to be context involved, and I provided that if you want to go back earlier. 49ers throwback, thank you for tuning in as well, enjoying this, and thank you all for tuning in right now. DC asks, how's Tariq Castro Fields been doing? And this was a topic I was actually going to hit, so thank you for bringing that up, TC. Tariq Castro Fields has been a pleasant surprise in training camp. He took the second team snaps with Deommodore Lenoir today. Ambry Thomas, a guy who struggled in recent days, was bumped down to third team today with Kadar Holman. And so that is a very interesting look. Castro Fields, the rookie, The 6th-round pick, who many thought could have even been a practice squad candidate, right now is CB number 4 behind Lenore, Mosley, and Charvarius Ward. Thomas got relegated to CB5. All right, let's continue. Niner Warriors asks another one: is Cal coaching anyone up during in front of the team? Is he just standing there watching? Does he ever stop things and point them out? I think he does stop things and point them out. He isn't necessarily coaching, like he isn't coaching in front of everybody. He spends time with position groups, right? Like a lot of times he'll spend time with the defense and the linebackers and the secondary during positional drills and be throwing passes. A lot of coaches help out with different drills. So essentially they're kind of like rotating a lot with different drills, and so that's what Kyle Shanahan has been doing. He's not standing, he isn't always standing there watching. Sometimes he's participating in the drill or overseeing the drill, that type of thing. And does he ever stop things and point them out? I think he's more involved in the play calling during 11 on 11s as opposed to the drills. That's where he kind of is most involved, because you'll see him point things out, you'll see him call things out, most likely the play call and things like that during, like, in between each play. All right, continuing. 49er Media, thank you for tuning in. And here is your question: how did the 49ers offensive line look today? They look fine. I'm not going to say they look good, because yesterday they looked good, at least in the first half, and then their performance waned in the second half. Today was not that, not super impressive. But again, as I prefaced, despite the entire 49ers first team offensive line going out there, no pads. So defensive line automatically has an advantage, especially in the run game. And so when you talk about it, you see a couple of these shorter gains for the 49ers in the run game, a couple of 0-yard gains, 3-yard gains, 2-yard gains, that type of thing. But I'm not as worried, because I saw the finished product yesterday, and the finished product yesterday looked good. The one question I have with the offensive line is the rotation between Jake Brendel and Daniel Brunskill. In a way, it's a little annoying, because yesterday you saw how the 49ers operated with Daniel Brunskill at center. And I'm not saying that the 49ers should start Daniel Brunskill. I'm just saying I'm not as high on this on this center competition, because I broke it down yesterday. Both centers have such different tendencies. Brunskill's blocking tendency and pass protection is different as to Brendel's, and not only does that affect the guards, who have to compensate in different ways for both players and get adjusted to how the other person blocks, that also it also impacts the quarterback, who has to realize, what is this person's blocking mechanism? How what should I be aware of? And if pressure comes, am I worried, or is that just how the person blocks? And because with Daniel Brunskill, I was talking with Brad Graham of the SF Niners. Brunskill might let up initially. He might give up a couple of yards, but then he anchors down and he anchors well. However, that's 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and so the quarterback needs to be aware of that and not be flustered by it, and instead of trying to scramble and maneuver out of the pocket, just sit back and make his throw, because he understands that Brunskill's holding up. It's just in a different stance, as opposed to Jake Brendel, who holds up at the line of scrimmage or the person gets behind him. As well in the run game, because in the zone read system, the center and offensive guards are working with each other to try and create blocks. And so you need to understand tendencies. You need to understand what kind of player they are. And so to me, I'm not a huge fan of this rotation. I think that there should be one player primarily playing with the ones and one player primarily playing with the twos, so that everybody can get acclimated. You can get this cohesion back together and look like the offensive line, at least a shell of it, as what you saw yesterday when there was more cohesion with the offensive line. So that's my kind of thoughts on the offensive line. But overall, it looked good. I thought outside of the rep that Drake Jackson beat him, Mcglinchey looked good today. Williams looked pretty good today. He got beat once only, I believe. But overall, it looked good. It's not that. Sorry. Let me say it looked good when you add in context of the blocking, right? There was still a good amount of pressure, and there were still people getting beat. Kevin Givens got a sack on Jake Brendel. There was still pressure there, but I thought overall it wasn't like quarterbacks running for their lives as you saw in the first week. The one question right now that I had based on just performance today is the run blocking, because the run blocking did struggle at times today to get gains of 5-6 yards, to get gains like that. There were a lot of 0, 2, and 3-yard plays, like I said again. Was Charvarius Ward on lockdown again? So Charvarius Ward didn't record an interception didn't record a PBU. So you might think, wow, oh, his name wasn't mentioned today. But Ward was still a very good cornerback today. He did. Ooh, I think he gave up one catch where Brandon Eyuk was in coverage. The one thing about Ward, he's doing pretty good. Ayuk beat him in one-on-ones again today. He had a nice rep in one-on-ones. So he like the battle between them two is really nice. But Ward overall was in lockdown. The reason some of those deeper throws that you heard about between Lance and Ayuk. There were two deep throws today that were just off target. The reason that they were off target is because they were so difficult to make given the good coverage. And so you had to put it in a certain point, and it's super hard to pinpoint that, hence the off target ball from Trey Lance. Same with Emmanuel Mosley on Deebo Samuel on a couple of times. There were two deep balls. One was the drop that was perfectly placed, and then another one was just the miscommunication where Deebo Samuel ran the 20 out instead of the 40 go that Trey Lance threw. All right, continuing forward. Let's see. Emiliano. Yeah, I mean, I answer any questions. If you're going to ask me a question, I'm going to answer it regardless of how you feel. Drubert, thank you for subscribing to the channel. All right, let's continue. Let's continue. There we go. There's the first clip of the day. Is the Jordan Mason hype real? Yes, it is. I think you should buy Jordan Mason stock. That's the kind of the joke going around. But specifically about play, Jordan Mason, while you might not see it necessarily with the yardage, right? It might be 2-3 yards today just because of the reasons I just said with the offensive line. But overall, Jordan Mason he's looked good. Yesterday was his best practice by far. He had 3 catches and then as well a strong physical run to the right side. He moves just really well. Like for a player of his size, you wouldn't expect him to move as he moves, but he cuts really well. He's quick with his cuts. He's pretty decisive. Which means like when I see that a player is decisive, to me, it normally indicates that his vision is pretty good, even if you can't necessarily see it in real time. And so that's the part. But the most important part about Jordan Mason isn't his running ability. It's his receiving ability. He's the best receiver right now that I've seen in training camp out of a 49ers running back. And the reason that I can say that with confidence is he's the one that he's made a couple of the longer catches. I'm not talking check downs. I'm not talking flats where where you're expected to make the catch and not drop it. When you talk about like the 10-yard throws, the comeback route, there was a really nice comeback play last week where I think it was Sutfeld that hit Jordan Mason. Like those routes, when your route running is tested, that's important. He hasn't necessarily won all of his one-on-ones yet, so that's the most important part to me. How does he continue to fare in those? But the Mason hype is real. I think right now he is slated to make the roster, although strong performances from JaMychal Hasty and Jeff Wilson today definitely are making a contending push after initially, at least in my book, being out. I see the huge trade debate in the chat, so I'm going to, when we go over the offense, because I go over the offense regardless, I'll talk about the quarterbacks. I'll talk about all the positions overall. All right, let's see. Is there a single other question, or should I? I don't think so. Oh, there is one question from DC. How was Segun Olabi today? Olabi is all right. He doesn't obviously get too much action, but the one interesting thing that I saw today, because it's really hard, obviously, to catch everything with the team. Olabi had reps with the second team today. Took some reps over Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles during the practice session. Today, it would seem like because of the shorter day, the 49ers wanted to get some of their younger guys, some of their guys deeper, like lower down on the depth chart, some extra reps. Like I said, Samuel Womack played with the ones today. Olabi had some reps with the twos today. Who's the other name? Tariq Castro-Fields played with the twos today over at Ambry Thomas. It was an interesting day today. A lot of changing around, as well as Jake Brendel getting the first team snaps. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and start breaking down the positions and how they played today, because I told you guys the stats. I told you guys a lot about what happened, but I'll go into a position-to-position breakdown, and then we'll end today's stream. Thank you guys, all 45 of you, for tuning in so far. It's been a fun time, and let's get into it. Starting off with the quarterbacks, because I see the debate in the chat. How did Trey Lance play today? He did not look that great. I did say that because it's true. He did not look that great, and the numbers reflect it, right? He was 1 of 7, in the scrimmage portion. There were 2 scrimmage portions. He was 1 of 4 in the first one, 0 of 3 in the second one, and then he was 2 of 2 in the red zone period. Great in the red zone period, not so great in the scrimmage session. So I will break down all of Lance's 7 throws just because it's a short amount of time and we can get it done soon. And so let me talk about it real quick. All right, let's go to it. Perfect. So Lance's first throw was an incompletion of Brandon Eyuk. Eyuk was well covered by Charvarius Ward on the route. He was running a 40-yard route and then facing towards the right sideline. It would have required a perfect throw for Lance to make it, and so Lance tested it. It was a tad bit overthrown, and it was an off-target throw out of bounds, 40 yards deep down the field. A deep incompletion there from Trey Lance. His second throw of the day was the 4-yard throw to the flat to Elijah Mitchell. Mitchell just dropped the ball. It was an accurate ball. Mitchell just dropped him. Then on the next play, he hit Elijah Mitchell for his 1 completion in scrimmage. It was a quick throw to the flat. Pressure was coming. It was a quick throw to the right side flat. Mitchell had a short gain after the catch. Then on the next play, Samson Ebukam initially got he was the first initial pressure immediately, and because Lance had a batted ball thing yesterday, you could see that he was trying not to get this pass batted, and so he tried to air it out a little higher, and the touch on it was just a little too high. He missed Jermichael Hasty, went off his fingertips. It was a high pass from Lance, turning into an incompletion. Then moving forward, Lance then threw his next pass was the incompletion deep to Deebo Samuel. Emmanuel Mosley was close in coverage, good coverage on the throw. There was initial pressure, but Lance he didn't maneuver. He detected it well and threw the 40-yard deep pass. This was his most accurate throw of the day, and it was a drop. Deebo Samuel dropped it, would have been a touchdown. The next play Trey Lance threw was his second deep attempt to Brandon Eyuk. This one was facing the other side of the field to the right side again. Brandon Eyuk was covered very well on the play by Talano Hufanga, who picked up, but Charvarius Ward was the guy closest in coverage. It was 40 yards down the field, but again, it was off target. It would have required a perfect pass for that to happen, and it was incomplete, thrown, it missed, and it hit out of bounds. On the next play, Trey Lance and Deebo Samuel had a miscommunication. Samuel ran a 20-yard out. Lance was expecting him to run a 40-yard go, it appeared. There was heavy pressure. It was an overload blitz, and so Lance threw it quickly, and it was a miscommunication. No defender was there, so it wasn't a dangerous pass necessarily. So you could see this as a throwaway in a way because there was nobody there. I don't know if it was a throwaway. I don't know if it was a miscommunication. From what it looked like after the play, it seemed like a miscommunication between the two, Deebo Samuel and Trey Lance, and so that was one of the incompletions. And then that was Lance's final incompletion during the scrimmage session. He went 1 for 7. And then the last 2 throws, like I said, the first was one of his best throw of the day because it turned out to be a completion. He rolled out on a play action play to the right side, facing pressure behind him, and fired to Brandon Eyuk on the right side, who kept both feet in and corralled the pass in for a touchdown. And then on the next play, he hit Jermichael Hasty for a check down, 5 yards in the flat. Immediate pressure was there, and it was a good throw. Hasty ran up the sideline. I didn't count it as a touchdown. Other people did. You can count it as you may. I already explained why. Those were his 2 passes. Overall, ended the day 3 of 9 overall. Talking about the other quarterbacks, Sutfeld didn't really try to test the field deep at all today, but he did have a couple of 20-yard passes deep. It was one of Sutfeld's cleaner days overall. He didn't really get sacked, which was nice, and he also didn't really overthrow passes, which he had been accustomed of doing in the past. He finished the day 8 of 8, including the red zone period, and had a nice touchdown play to Brandon Eyuk. Purdy, So Purdy did Purdy kind of things. Finished the day 3 of 6. He had an interception, which wasn't his fault. It was a drop, by Taysier Mack that ended up becoming an interception, and then a couple of accurate throws that were incomplete. Another one, the interception was to Yamado Lenore, and then he tried to hit Austin Mack, but Lenore broke that pass up. Another accurate throw from Brock Purdy. So overall, it was a fine day for the backups, but again, they weren't testing the field that much. It was a lot more checkdowns, a lot more short throws, 2, 3, 4 yard passes, and then yards after the catch. Moving on to the running backs who saw a good amount of action today. Like I mentioned Jeff Wilson Jr., right? And talking about how he was in the mix today. Elijah Mitchell looked good. Elijah Mitchell got a majority of reps today, which was important because Elijah Mitchell hadn't necessarily gotten that many reps yesterday. So he got a good amount of reps today. Obviously, the first team clear-cut running back one. I think the depth chart after that right now is in question. I don't necessarily know how it'll pan out. But that is, like I talked about Jeff Wilson Jr. getting some reps with the ones. Trey Sermon got some reps with the ones. TDP primarily got reps with the twos and the threes, but he also had one of the better days for a running back. I think him, Wilson, and Mitchell had the three best days for a running back. So take it as you may. Hasty, right now, he had probably the least exciting day overall of the backs. Mason was ahead of him, but running back battle right now is continuing after it seemed like Sermon and TDP had broken away as well as Jordan Mason. I don't think it's out of the mix right now for either Hasty or Jeff Wilson Jr. to make the team. Let's continue with the wide receivers because there are interesting ones. When you talk, we can talk about the one-on-ones because I haven't mentioned the one-on-ones too much today. But let's talk about these wide receivers. Brandon Eyuk continues to dominate. He's the best player on the field today. Today, he was the best offensive player. Yesterday, he was the best offensive player. That's just a constant with Brandon Eyuk. He's been a best offensive player overall. Great job by Brandon Eyuk so far. He's been able to high point. His ability to make contested catches has been the main thing on film. In practice so far, he's won his one-on-one routes. Yesterday, he beat Jimmy Ward deep for a touchdown on a one-on-one route. Today, he beat Charvarius Ward on a great route on a one-on-one route, and then beat Jimmy Ward again on a one-on-one route. So he won both of his reps today. He consistently wins. He was the best receiver today by far on the field. He's been the best in training camp, continuing to go for it. Now, continuing on with the receivers, I'll give you some surprises and then I'll give you some disappointments. Surprise, Tay Martin. Tay Martin had a great day today in the one-on-one sessions. He won both of his reps. First went against Jimmy Ward and just had a great release on Jimmy Ward. That was the big part about about Tay Martin today. His release package was something very special that you necessarily haven't seen from many other receivers, especially with the receivers that have failed to get separation so far in training camp. It was nice to see a receiver get separation from the jump, and Tay Martin did exactly that. He beat Jimmy Ward on one of his one-on-one reps. Then he beat Kadar Holman on his second one-on-one rep. So 2 good reps by Tay Martin today. Now let's talk about the disappointments. Juwan Jennings. And I'm not saying writing anything off, right? I still think Juwan Jennings is going to have a prominent role in this offense right now. When you talk about Juwan Jennings, though, today and yesterday he beat his guy, Darqueze Dennard, got in the end zone and dropped a pass. Today, he beat his guy again. He beat Samuel Womack on a great route. His route running has been pretty solid over the last 2 days. And then what did he do? He dropped the pass again in the end zone. He's had a couple of concentration drops so far in this setting and has a very quiet second week of training camp after flashing a little more in the first week. On the other note, Ray Mcleod working primarily with the twos after it seemed like he wasn't on the field. I believe he wasn't on the field yesterday or the day before, but after not so much action earlier, he worked with the twos and he got a couple of catches today. 2 catches from Nate Sutfeld. He himself has seen the action. Jennings also had that. Jennings, he's kind of had an up and down time. So I think it is a reps thing. I think he'll get better with reps, but it is a little concerning to see somewhat of a drop issue so far from Juwan Jennings, especially because he's winning these routes and is having easy chances to make the catches. He's just dropping them. Let's see what other receiver news we've got today before I move forward. Deebo Samuel. How could I miss number 19? Deebo Samuel right now and Trey Lance need to get on the same page. Like I said, they haven't gotten on the same page yet. And I don't think that Deebo Samuel, I think Deebo Samuel looks like in good shape. I think he's looking fine so far. He looked great yesterday, right? On the screen pass, he caught a pass from Sutfeld, and then he caught a pass from Trey Lance, a nice pass as well. So overall, I don't think Deebo Samuel is having an issue right now. It's just this is the issue. This is the thing that I'm talking about. This is what I'm seeing right so far from the team in that Deebo Samuel just has to get on the same page as Trey Lance. This was what I was worried about once he came back, which is also why I wanted him to come. Like I wanted him to come in as soon as possible. This is why I'm also not worried, like I just said, because Deebo Samuel came in as Pat started. He has the entirety of this week, entirety of next week, but most importantly, the preseason to get it all handled before starting week one. I still think Deebo Samuel is an amazing player. Obviously, he got the money he deserves, and now it's just time to put in the work and get involved with Trey Lance because both of them want to work together. You saw yesterday, I posted the video where Deebo Samuel and Trey Lance were working together. And I think, like on deep passes, trying to figure out where and what each other's tendencies were in a way. And so that's important. We'll see how the relationship continues over the next couple of weeks. Because one thing I've seen from these 49ers, it's very, very nice to see. One player, if they have a poor day, they bounce back on the next day. It's not like they continuously struggle. It's not that common for these guys to continuously struggle. Somehow they bounce back, learn from their mistakes, and just get better on the next day. You've seen it a couple of times with certain players, and I've put it in these practice reports. All right, now let's move on to these tight ends because the tight end action was interesting today. So, like I've mentioned before, who have been my top two tight ends in training camp so far? Jordan Matthews at tight end 2 and George Kittle. I thought both of them likely could have made the roster had they both been healthy. Jordan Matthews, unfortunately, got an injury. 2 days ago on Monday, on a one-on-one rep, he had an awkward landing, seems to injure his left foot, and he left the building today in crutches. Jordan Matthews, I don't think he will now make the roster. Super unfortunate for the receiver turned tight end because he was having a promising start to training camp. Now, though, the focus shifts to the other guys. George Kittle today did not practice, so that was something that was something about it. So Kittle did not practice, meaning who got the action at tight end? Tyler Croft. He started at tight end in the George Kittle position today. Obviously, there are the two tight ends, but the main tight end was Tyler Croft today. I'm not saying in action; I'm saying in reps. Croft had a fine day. He beat George Odom in a one-on-one rep. And talking about the other tight ends, one guy that continues to flash to me is Tanner Hudson. He had the 20-yard catch that I talked about. He did have that concentration drop after making a great catch over Ambry Thomas. So if he can just get that concentration down, he made the contested catch. And that ability from a tight end, especially with one who could have promise as a blocker as well, I think is important. So Tanner Hudson is the underrated name to keep your eye on. He beat Leon O'Neal today in the one-on-one reps twice. It wasn't once, it was twice. Let's see my other topics about the tight ends. Um, One other name that has actually been interesting. He won against George Odom today is Troy Fumagalli. I haven't necessarily thought too much of him. He seems a little slow as a tight end, but that might be a guy who also could see some action as well going forward. But not too much from the tight ends. This is in a way, it's a little bit of a concern because I wanted the tight end 2 to be shored up. However, the positive today, Charlie Warner. Returning from core muscle surgery or recovering from it on the PUP list. He was out there today sprinting. You saw Jason Verrett out there in the morning. You saw Garoppolo. And then Charlie Warner during practice was out there doing some sprints. He might potentially see a return back before the end of training camp, hopefully. But if not, during the preseason where he can flash again because he was tight end number 2 last year. And he'd be a great addition to continue going into his third year in the NFL. It's unfortunate for Warner, right? Because last year was his first true offseason. You normally want to have a great second offseason as well, given that his first year was with the COVID year, and he's been having to recover from injury. So we'll see if Warner can do well, because the 49ers right now are lacking at tight end 2. I don't really think there's a promising candidate right now out of the bunch. I'd say the favorite is either Croft or Hudson, but there really hasn't been one guy who's separated himself from the others, in my honest opinion. All right, let's move on to the offensive line because the offensive line was interesting. I did break down the offensive line because of a question earlier today. And guys, like I talked about, the questions. If you have any questions, be sure to drop the questions in the chat. I will get to them after finishing my position breakdowns, and then we'll get on out of here because I know you guys definitely want to hear. So let's go for it. Let's start about it. Starting with the offensive line, Trent Williams, Mike Mcglinchey both back today. So the offensive line, the starters were out there. Jake Brendel took the reps with the ones, although they were evenly split for one of the for how many ever days it's been now. Well, there have only been 2 days, really, in my opinion, where they haven't been evenly split. And that was yesterday when Brunskill took a majority of the reps, and Saturday when Brunskill took a majority of the reps. It's been interesting on the two biggest install days that what do you call it? The two biggest install days in practice that Daniel Brunskill has been the guy at the one. I think that the competition is. I don't think it's the best scenario. I think it's not the best strategy because when you talk about the quarterback competition, I already told you how it kind of hurts so far. It just like hurts with the continuity, hurts with the cohesion with the offensive line and quarterback. So I want to see the situation solved sooner than later. Moving forward on the offensive line, Spencer Burford. Burford had a pretty solid day today. He had a nice block with Spencer with Brunskill on a run block. I believe it was TDP. It was the HB draw where them two had a really nice block. I think that that was a good sign because Burford looked good today. It was one of his better practices. Didn't give up a sack. He had a couple of false starts in yesterday's practice and the practices before. No, nothing today that was wrong from Burford's end. Brendel got beat for a sack from Kevin Givens. I know that Mcglinchey got beat once, like I said. Williams got beat once, but a good day overall from the interior offensive line. The only thing is the run game, but I'm not too worried because of the pads. The run game worked yesterday on the interior when you had cohesion on the offensive line. I want that to continue next year. I mean, not next year, like next practice. My bad. That was like a big miscue. Next practice on Thursday when you have pads back on, when the ramp up continues after the off day tomorrow. That's the one thing I want to see from the offensive line. Moving on to the defensive line. Defensive line was interesting. The rotations were different because Nick Bosa did not play today, and so you had a different guy there. In addition, at the second level, right, there was no Dre Greenlaw, so Oren Burks got the first team reps, and that led Segun Olabi to get some second team reps as well. So it is interesting to see who the 49ers value. But again, I think it's primarily just based on the position, not necessarily who's the better player so far. And so moving forward on the defensive line, Charles Omenihu got first team snaps today and a significant amount compared to the days past. He's gotten first team snaps in a good amount of practices, especially as a pass rusher. But today he was in the base package with the first team. Him and Hyder got kind of split in a way first team reps, and Omenihu definitely looks better. I didn't. There were not offensive defensive line one-on-ones today, which was unfortunate. I really like the offensive and defensive line one-on-ones. I will be writing it down on Thursday when it happens, just like I did today, and I'll be tweeting it out. So be sure to check out for that. Offensive line one-on-ones was there yesterday. And so if you guys are interested in that, be sure to check out my Twitter feed. It will be there. But continuing on the defensive line, it was a good performance for the defensive line. Givens continues to succeed. Givens had another sack today. Seems like he's had a sack of practice. He's doing good as an interior pass rusher, which is really important for the 49ers because they haven't really had that guy on the interior so far. So to me, he was the flasher of today's practice. Javon Kinlaw as well. The one point that I want to make on Javon Kinlaw, he played a lot today. He played a lot with the first team, which has been a complete difference from the practices before. So good news on Javon Kinlaw. Going to the linebackers, no fights today. That's unfortunate. All Pro Fred did not start a fight with Brandon Eyuk, after the bad blood yesterday. So that was there. I did talk about Segun Olabi. I talked about Oren Burks, and I talked about like the linebacker rotations. Today, looking at the notes on who really had a good day as a linebacker. Let's see. Ooh. Didn't really seem like linebackers won that much today, honestly. Yeah, I don't think the linebackers really won that much today. So quiet day from the linebackers. But the one thing for the second day in a row that I see from the linebackers is their involvement in the run game. They've been able to breach the gaps and get their within 2 to 3 yards, stopping the run a good amount. And this is a good 49ers running team, right? You expect it to be better than last year, and they were the seventh best NFL running team last year, and even higher in touchdowns. So that's the difference between the two sides. The linebackers have been doing really good in stopping the run. Fred Warner, Azeez Shire, obviously the top two guys. And even without Dre Greenlaw today, I thought it was fairly successful. So the linebackers doing a pretty good job in the run game. I expect that to continue. And I'm excited to see that battle, the linebackers versus the running backs. Talking about the secondary, it was an interesting thing. Like I said, swaps were there. Darqueze Dennard got replaced by Samuel Womack to start the day in the slot. In addition, Tarvarius Moore did see some safety one reps for the first time. It wasn't the entire practice; it was for a small portion of practice. But Moore did see some safety one reps. Hufanga was there, and Hufanga had another good day. Hufanga continues to have good days. Today in one-on-ones, Hufanga he had a good rep against Tyler Croft, I believe. It was the first or second rep of the day. Great rep from Hufanga. He started the day off in two straight practices with good reps in one-on-ones. He beat George Kittle yesterday, locking him up and then recording a PBU. Same thing today. He did get beat by Ross Dwelly on a route, and so it does play some questions into his range, especially deep range. But overall, Hufanga has had a strong start to training camp, and I expect him to play well in his role. Not in the role of a regular safety necessarily, but in his role, I think Hufanga could definitely do it. Other news, safety wise, I told you guys how Jimmy Ward did get beat by who was that? Jimmy Ward got beat by Brandon Eyuk. I didn't see another rep of Jimmy Ward, but no, Jimmy Ward has been one of the better ones so far. So in terms of one-on-ones, like Ayuk has really been the only guy that has beaten Jimmy Ward in one-on-ones. Other guys in there, I know Dante Johnson got some extended run today, but not too obviously not too big of a storyline with Dante Johnson. The three safety looks though, if Moore is getting some safety one looks, there might be a lot more three safety looks this year with Talano Funga, with Tarvarius Moore, and then obviously with Jimmy Ward. So I think the three safety looks are going to be pretty cool. But that kind of wraps up my breakdown of today. Not too much. Obviously, I said it was a smaller practice, smaller amount of plays, not one on ones with the offensive defensive line, and like there wasn't too much unfolding given the slow offensive day. Good day for the defense. Coverage continues to be good. Coverage continues to just be phenomenal so far. There are plays where you just have to throw it somewhere because the coverage is just great everywhere, and it turns out to be an incompletion. Lance had a couple of those plays today. But I'll continue. I'll see if you guys have any other questions. Didn't really see many extra questions on the way down. Got to appreciate Mariah for the kind words. Thank you. But at the moment, oh, there's one. Emiliano talks about the UDFAs, except for Gemmel. How's Gemmel doing? Gemmel's been fine. He obviously third teamer doesn't get much time, but I think he's been good. I like Gemmel, like as a prospect, but I don't think he's flashed necessarily. The reason being, what do the 49ers covet at the linebacker position? It's speed. And that's the one thing Gemmel kind of lacks compared to the other guys. Segun Olabi is fast. Marceline McCrary Ball is fast. And so that's the one thing they covet. I think those two are atop the 49ers depth chart compared to Gemmel, even though Gemmel runs the mic. And the other reason is if they have Curtis Robinson, I think it's interesting to see what Gemmel's role could be, right? Because them two are similar. They're not as fast of Mike linebackers overall. And so that's why you don't necessarily always see like Gemmel's name being popped up, because Curtis Robinson, in my opinion, is the better middle linebacker at the moment. But guys, I think that was the last question. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Alan, thank you for tuning in, as well as DC. I will be back on. I'll be streaming tomorrow, so be sure to check it out with any extra news and just an overall kind of breakdown as compared to the daily breakdowns that I do. And then I'll be streaming definitely on Friday when I come back from practice. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next time.